Pardon the interruption, but I'm Mike Wilbon. Tony, the winner of last night's Westminster Dog Show, was a giant schnauzer named Monty.
And Tony Kornheiser, and if that event happened in a week, it would be our lead story. Because there's no hockey, there's no basketball, everybody's off, we got nothing.
We got college hoops, we got golf.
Yeah, we got little college hoops. Dogs would be great, I'm gonna tell you something. My dog Chessie was in that show, she'd have won. Or she'd have bitten one of the other dogs that did win. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. Today's episode, college upsets, four nations face off, and Tim Legler joins us for 5 good minutes. But we begin today with Dak Prescott. Not getting his money, but having this observation. Dak has complimented the Eagles on their Super Bowl victory, then took into account that the Eagles and Commanders are in the NFC East, and he concluded, quote, "We're very close, especially even watching the NFC Championship and those two teams that we battle against every year. It's our turn, and it's on us," unquote. Wilbon, how do you assess Dak's logic?
You know what, Tony? I know you really often zero in on what particularly prominent and worthy athletes say, and I don't. I just think we've reached the time where everybody, present company, half of it included, has a podcast, and everybody has to say something, and there's talk 24/7. And let me just point out, in Dak's case, he was speaking apparently at some sort of fundraiser to fight cancer. So I care much more where he was and the need to say something than I care about sort of what he said and parsing all the words and whether they're as good as the Eagles or the Commanders and what's going on in the NFC East. It doesn't sway me. It doesn't really move me. I don't care what Dak says. I want to see him on the field next season. I hope he's healthy enough following this latest ailment and surgery to be I want to see him play. I don't really care what he says. I really don't.
Yeah, it's a stump speech. It's something you say to make the fans happy and give them hope. Yeah. I have no problem with it. The logic is flawed, though, because if it was as simple as playing a team twice every year, then your Chicago Bears would be in the playoffs because they play Detroit twice every year, and they play Green Bay twice every year, or the Raiders would be in the playoffs because they play Kansas City twice every year. The fact of the matter is that last year, the Cowboys lost to the Eagles twice by a margin of 73-14. It's an unbelievable margin. You know, and they are, in the last 3 years, the Eagles have gone to the Super Bowl twice, and the Cowboys have been 1-2 in the playoffs and have watched the Super Bowl at home, you know, on TV. I mean, they're in a situation, and Dak's going to make them better, Mike. If he plays the whole season, going to make them better. But they're in a situation where Philadelphia is discernibly better than they are, and Washington is probably better than they are also. And to be fair, they haven't been to the Super Bowl in 29 years. So,
Tony,
I wouldn't bet on it.
But the other piece, there's nothing Dak can say that's going to reverse what you just said about what happened with the Eagles last season, or the fact that he's got two division teams ahead of him, apparently. Nothing he says is going to change it. In the meantime, we had a spate of top 25 upsets in men's college hoops last night. 15th ranked Kentucky topped number 5 Tennessee for the second time in 2 weeks. 20th ranked Michigan took over the lead in the Big Ten, at least for now, with a win over number 7 Purdue, and 3 unranked teams pulled off wins. Indiana beat number 11 Michigan State. Kansas State won a tight win at home over number 13 Arizona. And UConn, recently now unranked, beat number 24 Creighton on the road. So, Tone, which was the biggest deal?
Yeah, so my initial reaction is to say it's Kentucky winning, because we'd seen Kentucky lose at home, right, about a week ago to Arkansas, and things weren't going well. And then I would convince myself to say this because it's an SEC game. And we're told every day that the SEC is the best basketball conference in the country. And a lot of people stand up and say it could be an all-SEC Final Four. And Tennessee was number 5. And Kentucky now, Mike, is 7-1 against teams in the top 15, which is fabulous. But if I pick that game, I'm just going along with the crowd, you know, and I don't know. I have to admit, I haven't kept up with college basketball that much this year because I was one of 127 million people that watched the Super Bowl instead. So I'll give you 2 quick ones. Indiana, because Mike Woodson said he's stepping down at the end of the season before they fire him. And UConn. And here's why. And UConn beats a good team. They beat Creighton at Creighton. That's a good win. They're a ranked team. But here's what I do know about college basketball. The last 2 years, UConn won the national title. No SEC team won the national title.
Indiana at Michigan State. That's the answer to the question. I mean, my man Mike Woodson, who, got that school, that team to the NCAA tournament, and then, okay, it's not a good year, but the avalanche that's fallen on him is completely, exaggerated and out of proportion as far as I'm concerned. And he stopped Izzo from breaking his record, his tie with Bob Knight. That's a big deal. But let me say quickly, Tony, there's no great team in college basketball. Teams won at home last night where they ought to win at home. And that would include Kentucky, where they ought to win that game. Michigan beat Purdue. Right. Michigan playing in Ann Arbor ought to win that game. And Kansas State playing against Arizona, where people are stopping and starting 6-game streaks. They ought to win that game at home, and they did. So we haven't had any giant upsets, not from last night, not in my opinion.
Let's move to the NHL All-Star Game, or what is taking the place of the NHL All-Star Game this year. It is the Four Nations Face-Off. It's a round-robin tournament with teams from Canada, the United States, Finland, and Sweden. Players are quite enthusiastic about it. Wilbon, you've agitated for something like this in the NBA All-Star Game for years, the U.S. versus the world. Do you like the NHL experimenting with this thing instead of an All-Star Game?
Yes, Tony. Yes, I do. I like the NHL trying something, realizing its All-Star Game, like the NBA All-Star Game and the Pro Bowl, are dogs. They'd all turned into dogs for various reasons. I don't mean the Westminster show either. So the NHL said, okay, let's do something. Let's do something. Let's not just sort of smooth it over and trot the same thing out there in shirts and skins or whatever it is. And so, yes, I applaud the NHL. I don't know that it will work. It's a long deal. It goes to like a week from tomorrow. But I applaud it. I want to see, guys who are rivals and teammates mix it up and go against each other. And the NHL, I mean, the NBA in particular, ought to be taking notes because it needs to do something radical, and it won't.
Shirts and skins in a hockey game would be fabulous. I like that idea right away.
Sure.
The NHL moved away from their All-Star game because they had a score like 17-12 and 10-5. It's junk. Baseball is the only All-Star game that works. Look, this is a good idea. This is a good try. You represent your country. I think you're going to be motivated to play hard. I think the hits will probably be real. So my fear, Mike, is that someone gets hurt badly and misses a lot of time. But I think it's worth the opportunity to see this happen. My only question is, what happened to the Russian team? There is no Russian team, and there's a reason there's no Russian team.
Can't be.
It's because of the sanctions against Russia for invading Ukraine. I'm not going to get political here, but there are almost 50 Russian players in the league, one of whom is going to break Wayne Gretzky's record for the most goals of all time. So it feels a little empty to not have a Russian. This is the complicated part of this when you have nations. But I agree with you. It's a good try, we think. Let's take a break.
For trying.
Coming up.
Applause for trying.
Yeah, the new look Lakers are back on the floor tonight. We're going to ask Tim Legler what stands out to him about them.
We'll also ask him whether he sees any hope for the downcast, down in the mouth Dallas Mavericks. The NBA had every chance to go international versus the U.S., and they punted. Yeah. They bailed. Because the players apparently don't want to have real competition.
There's no defense. People go 200 points. You can't have that. You can't have it. We have NBA questions for our great friend, our longtime friend, Wilbon. We were there at the launch of his career. ESPN NBA analyst Tim Legler. Let's start with this. Luka, LeBron, and the Lakers are at the Utah Jazz tonight. You saw the Lakers the other night in Luka's debut. You're lucky to have done that, it seems to me. What stood out to you?
Well, first, just the buzz in the arena walking in 2 hours before the game. It felt like a major playoff game or maybe even a finals type environment walking in. And you're talking about, a game against the Utah Jazz who aren't playing really for anything, a 12-win team. So that was the first thing, just the electricity that was created. But then once I saw them play, really what I saw was limitless possibilities offensively for J.J. Redick and what these two guys represent playing together. You're talking about, along with Nikola Jokic, I think there are three guys in this league that can beat you in every conceivable way as a scorer or a passer. And that means making any play that needs to be made with your passing vision anticipation because of their size and their strength and their ability to get the ball from one side of the floor to the other. They're making the right reads combined with their threat as a scorer. Those three guys are in a special class. And now the Lakers have two of them. And they have them potentially on opposite sides of the floor. They can involve them in similar action to try to get the switch of the mismatch that they want. That, to me, is what stood out. Just what they can eventually become the more time they have together.
Well, that's one side of the seesaw, Tim. You're at the other one tonight in Dallas where the Mavericks are back on the floor. When you look at what's going on with that team, all the injuries to the bigs, I mean, my goodness, it's like half a roster of bigs being down, the fan base being unhappy. Tim, is there a silver lining you see at all for the Mavericks franchise right now?
I'm going to be honest, I really don't. And I know people might think, hey, you got AD back, you've got a good team still, and all those things are true. And heck, this year might be tough with these injuries. I don't know how long it's going to take to get fully healthy. You're going to be coming from a really difficult spot in the West, maybe a play-in team, and then trying to roll through 3 series on the road in the West. I don't know that they do a lot of damage this year, but even if you're able to do something like that, make a run this year, make a run next year, hey, maybe win a title in the next 3 years, I don't know that that would salve the wounds of the people in Dallas because number one, they're thinking, hey, we might have done that with Luka too. We'll never know that. They went to the finals a year ago, so who knows ultimately what their upside would have been. But more importantly, you took away a guy that represented what will be the favorite player for many, many, many people in Dallas. And that will be forever. No matter who comes in after him, no matter how short his time was here, what he does in LA or beyond, it represented a gut punch to the fan base and to the community. So I don't even think short-term winning is going to be enough when you look at what Luka Doncic potentially represented over the next 10, 12, 15 years if he stayed in a Mavericks uniform.
Let me go to the Warriors at this point. Steph Curry has been very praising of Jimmy Butler. He's basically said, Jimmy Butler getting here has made me a better player, made me more comfortable on the court. Is this fit strong enough to overcome the fact that the Warriors have no size at all?
To ultimately overcome it, Tony, probably not, because number one, Oklahoma City is the barometer now. That's the measuring stick in the West. And they can play big, they can play small, they can play fast. They're the best defensive team in the NBA. So I don't know that anybody's overcoming that this year in the West. But what it does do is make the Golden State Warriors have a little juice here down the stretch. And there's a little extra. And I've seen extra, even in Steph Curry's bounce and rhythm and the way he's moving. He looks quicker. He looks more into it, I think, because he has hope. And what Jimmy Butler addresses are a few things. One, he's a very underrated passer. So he has already made reads in a couple of games that the guys that they had occupying those minutes before couldn't make. He knows how to play. He has a very high IQ. And when he's motivated, he really impacts the game on both ends. And I think he is highly motivated. I think he's got a lot to prove after what went down in Miami and just some of the hits he took. He is ready to come in and contribute, play in a system that's fun. And he has already had a direct contribution on what Steph Curry's been able to do offensively and freeing up some space for him and then doing things defensively to help this team. Their size is a factor, though, Tony, or lack thereof, I should say. No doubt about it.
Tim, we'll let you wrap up with this. I'm in Arizona right now, as you can probably see. I was in the building last night for Kevin Durant surpassing 30,000 points in his career, a point that only Wilt and Michael Jordan got to faster than KD. But I want to ask you about a very complex thing with Kevin Durant right now. He's on a team, as great as he's playing, he's on a team which is like 12th, I think, in the standings right now. They're nowhere near a real playoff spot. What do you make of KD at this point in his career? The talent, but the fit with the Suns, where he may wind up. What do you make of all of it?
Well, first, I want to just acknowledge the accomplishment, because sometimes you hear a guy, reaches a milestone and you show the highlight and everybody kind of goes, oh, that's great, he got a milestone. And then you actually see the list of players that they put up on the screen on SportsCenter last night. And you look at that and take that in for a second, and there's 8 guys in the history of this league have done that. And you look at the names: LeBron, Kareem, Karl Malone, Kobe, Michael Jordan, Dirk, Wilt, Kevin Durant. Let me look at that list. I just first want to pat him on the back. He's one of the greatest players this league has ever seen. He's certainly one of the most entertaining. Unfortunately for Kevin Durant, he's in a situation right now with a team that just doesn't have enough fight. And that's what I see most nights when I watch Phoenix. I don't think they handle adversity great. I don't think they're necessarily a particularly tough team. They can be very good offensively on given nights. The consistency isn't there. They just haven't been able to gel and figure it out since they brought these 3 scorers together. They even made a coaching change. They've surrounded them with different role players. None of it has really translated to winning at a high level. So unfortunately for Kevin Durant, he did something incredible, and it's a little bit obscured by the fact that Phoenix right now is not looking like a legitimate threat in the Western Conference.
Tim, so good to have you on. So good. Thank you so
Tim.
much.
Really appreciate it, man.
Always enjoy it, guys. Anytime for you.
Let's take one last break. Still to come, why did Joel Embiid, Wilbon's boy, pass on a 3-point attempt that could have given the Sixers the lead last night? Why?
Yeah, I knew you were going to lock in on that. I knew you'd find that clip.
Yeah.
The Dodgers decide whether Shohei will pitch in the Cactus League. I'm here. I'm in the Cactus League. Let's see Shohei, okay? Enough promise. Let's see him. I'm right here.
Happy time, people. Happy belated birthdays. 28th to Saquon Barkley and 22nd to Cooper DeJean. These birthdays were on Sunday, the day the Eagles won the Super Bowl, making these Eagles teammates world champions. Barkley didn't do much in the game. 25 carries for 57 yards, 6 catches for 40 yards. But the Chiefs completely keyed on Barkley because he'd been so destructive in the 3 previous playoff games, where he had rushed for 442 yards and 5 touchdowns. And the Eagles wouldn't have gotten to the Super Bowl without Barkley. DeJean is a rookie cornerback out of Iowa, and he made maybe the biggest play in the Super Bowl, a second period 38-yard pick six off of Patrick Mahomes. That made the score 17-0 Philly, and it was almost good night.
Let them eat cake. A phrase that has never been more appropriate for those 2 guys to have. What bigger birthday present are you going to get the rest of your life? Even if they win another Super Bowl on their birthday, which they can't, it's not going to be better than the first one. Wow. Happy birthday.
Happy anniversary, Vince Carter. On this day 25 years ago, the second-year Raptors guard put on arguably the greatest exhibition in the history of the dunk contest with a masterclass in Oakland. With all due respect to Jordan and Dominique, Carter's collection was incomparable. His set included a 360-degree windmill, a between-the-legs bounce alley-oop, an elbow in the rim dunk, also known apparently as a honey dip, and a 2-handed dunk from 1 step inside the foul line. Carter played 22 seasons in the NBA, spanning 4 decades, before retiring on March 11, 2020, the day the NBA was suspended due to COVID. Carter was a first-ballot Hall of Famer. He was inducted this past October.
Cheers to Vince Carter. Just a great guy, first of all. But, Tony, you mentioned apologies, too. And, yes, Dominique and Jordan and Julius Erving. Those are the 3 guys. And Vince might have won this dunk contest if he had participated when he was 40. He might have done that. He's just that great at that thing.
Happy trails to a go-ahead 3-point attempt by your boy Joel Embiid. The Sixers center had a chance to give the Sixers the lead over the lousy Raptors late, but passed on a wide-open 3 and then drove into traffic and immediately lost the ball. Said Embiid after the game, quote, "I thought I could step in and shoot the mid-range. Looking back at it, I probably should have shot the wide-open 3-pointer," unquote. The Raptors went on to win by 3 in Philly over a Sixers team that played all 3 of its big stars. Philly is now 20-33. They're a game and a half out of the play-in, Mike, out.
I know, behind the Bulls. Tony, that's his shot, too. Look, Embiid owned it. And let me give him credit for that. You give credit to people who make a mistake for owning it. He owned it. But he's at the top.
That's right.
That's his 3-point shot. Not a corner 3, not an extended elbow. It's his shot. You think he's going to take it and drain it. It's just not going well for the Sixers. I'm rooting for him, but it's not going well.
I've seen him make that. I've
Yes.
seen him make that shot. Let's go to the big finish. The Thunder go for their 7th straight win tonight at home against the Heat. Do you like their chances?
Yeah, Tony, 24-3 at home. They win. They're the best team in the league. Yes, I like their chances against anybody. Shohei will not pitch in the Cactus League here in Arizona this spring. I'm disappointed. What about your thoughts?
I'm sad. I want to see him pitch. He says he thinks he's ready in May. I hope that's true in the majors. NFL Network reports that Bengals defensive captain Jermaine Pratt has requested a trade. Is that a big deal?
No. Angels third baseman, your boy, Anthony Rendon, out again, indefinitely again, after this time hip surgery. You disappointed?
He's never been the player at all that he was in Washington. He gets hurt every single year with the Angels. It's really sad. He doesn't play 50 games a year sometimes. Last one, Ohio State will reportedly hire Matt Patricia as its new defensive coordinator. Does that make sense to you?
Sure does. It makes as much sense as Chip Kelly being a coordinator there this past year. Absolutely, sure, Matt Patricia.
We're out of time. We'll try and do better the next time. I'm Tony Kornheiser.
And I'm Mike Wilbon. Same time tomorrow, knuckleheads. You can get the PTI podcast on the ESPN app or Apple Podcasts. And now.
I'll see you tomorrow, by the way. You'll be home, right?
You sure? The snow gonna let me in, D.C.?
Yeah, I'll come in. All right, Wilbon, are you more interested in how the Warriors appear to be coming together or how the Mavericks appear to be coming apart?
Tone, this isn't close to me. And I look, the Mavericks, I was fascinated by that for a few days, and I feel bad for them. They have all their bigs, including Anthony Davis hurt. I was there in Dallas a week or so ago when young Derek Lively went out for the rest of the regular season. Probably, I feel bad for them. Fascinated with the Warriors. They got Jimmy Butler, okay, an important figure in the NBA in the last 12 years, and surpassed even by historically important figures, Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr. And they are joining forces. They've played a couple of games together. Jimmy Butler has more free throws in those 2 games than any Warriors players had in 7 years. So they're going to play differently. They're undersized like the Lakers. They'd be great in the 6'6" and under league, which they can't play in. But the Warriors are always fascinating. And if Draymond Green and Steph Curry say they are re-energized and they're fascinated to play with Jimmy Butler and what he does, then so am I. I'm going to watch them like you and the Lakers. I'm going to be the same way about the Warriors the rest of the way.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with anything you said. You've made your case well. It is true that Steph Curry has specifically said that Jimmy Butler's presence has energized him. That's a very important thing. But down the road, I don't know how far they go because they don't really have any big people. Like I don't see them as title contenders. Right. So what I'm going to say is something different, and I'm sorry the bell rang so quickly. I'm going to take the perspective of somebody who's been a sports columnist for a long period of time. And as you know, Mike, the losing locker room is almost always better than a winning locker room.
Yes,
and there's no losing locker room in sports today like Dallas. They make this trade. They get rid of Luka Doncic. They bring in Anthony Davis. He doesn't even play a full game before he goes out. All of their bigs are out. Luka Doncic is gone, and there is a revolt among the fans. I'm sorry. I mean, the bigger story to me, that's where you want to be tonight because they are a disaster tonight, and it is richer to write about to me tonight than the Warriors.
Tony, there's no question it's a compelling story. And there's some people in that room I know, or in that organization. Jason Kidd, who is a historic figure in his own right, a champion and a terrific coach, and he's got to somehow deal with that. Michael Finley, who's an assistant in the executive level, a Chicago kid, I've known his whole life and career, and they're dealing with this. Nico Harrison, who I know. You're right. It's compelling. It's tough. As a sports columnist, I know, I agree with you. It's some kind of story. But in terms of the basketball part, what I want to see, give me some more of that Golden State starting tonight. I want to see that. I will see that. That's it. We're done. Back to you.